Well, it's Monday night. It's 11 p.m. here. It's a little bit earlier out there by you, Andrew. But this is episode 2 of Drinking Champagne. We both kind of had a busy weekend this week, so we're recording. Well, I was going to say we technically don't have a set recording time, but we're recording on Monday night, trying to get something out weekly-ish, and talk some racing. But Andrew, how you doing?
I'm doing really well, thanks. One of the things that was going on in my life, went up to Portland with my better half, was up there searching for Sasquatch for 3 days, couldn't find that. Did find some beautiful falls, some fantastic food. If you're looking for a fun place to sample a lot of different kinds of restaurants, I cannot recommend Portland, Oregon highly enough. I feel like Shooter McGavin. The real winner here is the city of Portland. Every time I go, it gets harder to leave. They must be putting something in the water, Josh. But happy to be here. A lot of cool stuff going on in the world of horse racing. We're less than 3 weeks out from the Breeders' Cup, and some fun stuff's happened over the last couple of days that I think we're going to have a lot of fun diving into. So to all of you out there watching, listening, whatever, thank you. Let's enjoy ourselves.
Yeah, I had a pretty busy weekend. I had a couple birthday parties on Saturday, and then last night we went downtown to this cocktail bar. Oh my goodness, why am I blanking on the name of this place? Oh, the
You had so
Aviary.
many cocktails when you were
Yeah,
there.
yeah, the Aviary. It's part of the Alinea Group, which is Grant. I think it's Octaz or Oshitz. I forgot how you pronounce his last name, but it's his group. Michelin star chef, and so he's got this cocktail bar, and it's like molecular gastronomy. So like the first drink I had, the ice was actually smoked paprika. So like
Ooh.
the as it melted, the you got a little bit smokier and smokier as the went along. The second one was a Jungle Bird, which is one of my favorite cocktails. Period. Which is it's a tiki drink with Campari, which is a like a bitter Italian. I think it's an aperitif. I forget. I always forget the difference between the two, but it's a liqueur, very bitter. And this drink is just awesome. I love Jungle Birds. Well, the way they made it here is the dark rum, instead of putting it in the drink, they made them into little like if you've ever had bubble tea or boba tea, the little like balls. They
Oh, wow.
made the rum into those little balls. So like you're drinking it, and they're like exploding in your mouth, and that's the rum part of the drink. It was like
Wow.
the amount of
That's
time they spend on
intense.
this stuff, it's crazy. And then the last one they brought out, it was a rocks glass with a sphere of ice in it, and then they gave you like this little like almost like slingshot you put on top of the glass, and you break the ice, and the cocktail comes out of the ice. It
Whoa.
was just some like the most innovative and cool and fun stuff ever. And if you guys ever have a chance, and if you're in Chicago and you get a chance to go, it's one of those places you got to like make a reservation a month or two out. But it was definitely worth it. It was a real cool experience. So I was also going to mention I've literally never been on the West Coast.
Really? You've never been on
Yep,
the West Coast?
never been on the West Coast. I think maybe I've gotten to Iowa before. And I
Yeah,
think
that's not the West Coast of
but
anything.
that's about as far west as I've gone. Oh, Vegas, duh. I've gone to Vegas, and I've gone to Arizona, but like as far as like actually getting to the coast, I'm like, how could I forget Vegas? I go to Vegas 4
I
times a
was
year.
going to say, yeah, where do you think Vegas is?
I have no idea. But anyways, I haven't actually been on the coast, so I haven't been to California, Washington, Oregon. My wife thinks that the Pacific Northwest would be like the perfect like climate for her, because
It's
she loves the rain. She loves it being nice and cool. She doesn't like the heat, and so we have to check it out sometime. And you definitely sold it. So
Yeah, it's
Portland's got
it's a
on the
fun
list.
place. Portland's a good town. There are rumblings of people who complain about the homeless situation there, and look, it exists. I worked for a group in the homeless space for about a year last year. The problems are incredibly deep and would be an entire another podcast to talk about why that is. But It doesn't ruin the city. Powell's Bookstore is a wonderful, wonderful place that everyone needs to go to at least once before they kick the bucket. And there are a number of other places that I'd highly recommend. Multnomah Falls, about a half hour outside of the city of Portland, makes for a really good hike. My hips were dying yesterday, Josh, dying. It was a 2.5-mile hike, a mile and a quarter up, mile and a quarter back. And when you're going a mile and a quarter back down the hill, it's fine. It's wonderful. It's great. It's all downhill. The mile and a quarter uphill, that'll kick your butt if you're not prepared for it. And yesterday I was part of the Walking Wounded in the city of Portland. But no, I can't recommend that city highly enough. You got to get out here, man. If for no other reason, go to Southern California, go to Hollywood for a little bit, go to Santa Anita, come on up here, go take in the fairs, go up to Washington, go to Emerald. There's a lot of really cool things out here.
Yeah. So a lot of fun stuff we did over the weekend, but racing obviously never stops. And one of the things that were there were two kind of things clicking around Twitter we wanted, or the horse racing world we wanted to talk about. Although, I mean, sometimes it does seem like Twitter is the horse racing world, especially on Mondays. Andrew, you're shaking your head because, much like you think that horse racing Twitter is basically the WWE of like the late 2000s.
It is. And the fact that people don't realize it, including a number of people both of us call friends, a lot of those people are the willing participants in that entertainment. It's part Roman Coliseum with a whole bunch of people who think they're the center of the gambling universe when, the reason they're on Twitter is because it's horse racing on a Monday. It's just... Yep. Man, but no, thankfully we've got some stuff that'll allow us to work our way out of the dregs of humanity. If you will.
Yeah, so one of the things that there was a lot of buzz around the full sister to Malathaat, Julia Shining for Stone Street Stables, Luis Saez rode, Todd Pletcher trained, and won a really impressive race. Broke slow and looked like was asked really early out of the gate and was not responding, and just made a real impressive move and lapped everybody and ended up winning by I don't remember how many lengths, maybe by a full length, maybe a little bit more, but I mean it was very impressive because of just how she broke 10 lengths back and went super wide and won. But interestingly, the buyer came back very slow, 72 from what I've seen. And yeah, this has just brought to mind a couple of other horses that we've seen. Thinking about last year, Wit, I think, was one that kind of won and was very slow buyer fig, kept on finding trouble and people kept on betting back, so that's a little bit different because it wasn't just based off the debut. Justique won very impressively her first time out this year, ended up I think just not running a lick her last out. And I mean, even you go back further to a horse like Princess Noor, who was winning races on the West Coast, but those speed figures were very, very slow. And as soon as she kind of came east and found other competition, just never showed up. So I know. Obviously, this is Julia Shining's first time out. When I saw it, I kind of had Run Happy vibes, just kind of the way that the horse is a little green, not wanting to respond, and then once it kind of just figured it out and straight and just lapped everybody and won. But I think you had compared it to a different horse. Who was that?
Yeah, it was a horse that debuted at this place right back here about 10 years ago. I was on the roof of the Saratoga press box for a maiden race where we all sort of had an inkling that there was going to be some talent in that particular race. Well, there was this little 2-year-old trained by Shug McGahee named Honor Code. And it was a rainy, dreary day at Saratoga. Thankfully, the rain had subsided for at least a little bit at that point. But the track was a sloppy one. You were never quite sure of the legitimacy of the times you were seeing. But what we saw was Honor Code rallying from 12, 15 lengths back under a ground-saving ride to win going away. And the memory that I have in my head from that day wasn't even necessarily Honor Code. The cameras on the NYRA feed cut to Shug McGahee in the stands. And you can find Shug McGahee in the Saratoga stands. He's there. He's standing with people. And I'm going to try to get the look on his face as to what he saw. It was like this. It wasn't necessarily stunned, but it was almost bemusement. Like, oh, that happened. Okay. You knew that they knew the horse had talent, right? And obviously Honor Code would go on to be one of the better older horses of his crop a couple of years down the line. He missed a lot of his 3-year-old campaign, came back as a 4-year-old, won the Whitney, won a couple of other big races for Shug, arguably second best in American Pharoah's Breeders' Cup Classic, except Javier Castellano fell asleep and woke up at the half-mile pole. Seriously, watch that race and try to justify how Honor Code is 20 lengths back going down the backstretch. You can't do it. But that's what I got out of that particular race. And the other thing that comes to mind is just a cautionary tale. When you have 2-year-olds and lightly raced horses, obviously speed figures are important. They're done with math in mind. There's usually some reason behind the numbers you're seeing. But every Saratoga meet, you see some meets where there's a 2-year-old race where the winner has, say, a 62 Beyer speed figure, but 4 of the 7 horses behind the winner came back to win it next asking. You also see races where the winner earns a 90 Beyer speed figure and none of the other horses come back to run a lick. Speed figures, whether they're Beyers, Ragozins, Thoroughgraphs, whatever you use, they're a piece of the puzzle. They're not the whole puzzle, especially when horses are very, very young and they're still sort of learning what they're doing. I mean, we saw that with that horse at Keeneland over the weekend. This is a horse that's still clearly figuring things out. That horse was getting pumped on from the word go, had no idea what was going on, rallied from last to first, going way, way, way wide. It was an Arazi-like move, but you sort of saw when that horse got clear, she started playing a little bit. And that allowed the second place horse, who I think might be a runner, to gain on her and at least make a race of it at the end. That horse is going to get better. If you're clowning on that race because of a 72 Beyer speed figure, I'm not saying you don't have a point, but find another reason just to be safe.
I'm definitely clowning on that.
Okay.
That. No, you know, honestly, it to me, it's just one of those things where everybody is gonna bet that horse next out. Whatever she goes, if she goes in the juvenile fillies or whatever she does, she's gonna get bet down because everyone's gonna have seen that replay, and I feel like they're gonna see that replay and they are gonna ignore whatever speed figure or anything happens. And yeah, I mean, you know, like you said, Very Green will improve. We thought the same thing with Wit, and you know, it took Wit moving to the turf before and a year later before we really saw the horse start to figure it out. So even though, like you said, there is excuse me, a ton of room to improve, doesn't necessarily mean we're going to see it next race. But yeah, I mean, it was visually impressive. I love watching stuff like that. I always tell people one of my favorite races to watch is there's this race at Hawthorne, and there was a horse named Donna Guska, and I always forget the names of these announcers, but he's still the announcer at Hawthorne. The horse breaks awfully, and he's just like way back as Donna Guska, like on the back stretch, and then next thing you know, like the horse just like rallies up the rail from like 20 lengths back at like the top of the stretch. It was just the craziest thing ever. Like everyone loves to see that. Everyone loves to see that. I mean, the Zenyatta race, everyone loves to watch her just, you know, bulldoze down the outside on the.
I love to watch her lose that one time.
Well, you and Caitlin Free, both of
yes,
you. Caitlin,
I'm a horrible, miserable person. Everybody out there on YouTube and on Twitter, that'll be what people see from all of this. We'll do a 30, 45-minute show, and the one thing people will see is Andrew Champagne hates Zenyatta. Kill him!
Yeah, I remember I was teasing Caitlin Free about her just like dislike about Zenyatta, and I think I was in her Twitter for days, just typing Zenyatta in there, but yeah, I don't know. I don't get it.
I didn't, and the full story behind that for those unfamiliar, I didn't hate Zenyatta. I was looking for reasons to make money off of Dangerous Midge in the Breeders' Cup Turf, who went off at 8-1, won like a very good thing. Doubles to Zenyatta were paying squat. So I had Dangerous Midge singled in doubles with 5 other horses in the Classic, not named Zenyatta. Blaine gets the nose down. Spoiler alert, they were never catching that horse if they went around again. Watch the gallop out. Zenyatta never goes by. But I was standing in the Saratoga harness track waiting to cash because there was about a 15 or 20-minute tote delay. And people were filing out of that track like they had just witnessed a funeral. It was surreal. But trust me, I wasn't giving up my spot in line to go say I'm sorry.
What was the other big one? Was it Smarty Jones losing the Belmont? That was another one that one. Yeah, that one I heard was very funeral-esque.
It was. I was actually, there's an old photo that the National Museum of Horse Racing and Hall of Fame used to sell. Edgar Prado autographed a couple of them because he rode Birdstone that day. If you look at the reverse angle photo from when Birdstone starts passing Smarty Jones, you look 7 rows up from the outside rail up the apron, you're going to see someone with a video camera over part of his face like this. And that's me chronicling the event for Kingston High School television. It's there. I've been trying to find that photo. If any of you out there know where that photo is and where I might be able to buy it, by all means, let me know. But I was there that day. It was surreal's. It's the right word for that, because I was there for Funny Side a couple of years prior, and it sort of became evident as the day went on that it wasn't going to happen with him. He had that massive workout a couple of days prior to the Belmont, and Bobby Frankel had Empire Maker finely tuned for that one. Andy Serling has the expression of, are you confident or are you Bobby Frankel with Empire Maker confident? Because Frankel probably cashed the biggest bet of his life that day. I was there for Big Brown. If you listen to that race, you can hear Tom Durkin when they're on the backstretch saying, and Kent DeSormeau waits. He waits on Big Brown. And I remember thinking, he's not waiting. That horse is done. And of course, that's exactly what happened. It took me moving 3,000 miles for us to get 2 Triple Crown winners. And Josh, one of them was what part of the reason you're heavily involved in the game. So you know what? You're welcome.
It's not even Justify winning the Triple Crown wasn't part of the reason it got me in it, but it was that was definitely the year.
Yeah.
If I had to pick a horse that really got me interested in into it was the Pat Day Mile winner that year, Funny Duck, because I cashed like a $10 win bet on that horse.
Okay, I know we're getting really off task, but I remember that race. And how the hell did you come up with that horse?
Dude, I have no idea. I think, if I remember correctly, and like I said, I always tell people that, like, if I don't have a form in front of me, I'm just like absolutely useless. Like, I don't have a good memory for this kind of stuff. I've never had that kind of good memory for that kind of stuff. But if I remember correctly, I wasn't even using the form. I was using and I don't even know if DRF still produces this. It's called like the DRF Easy form.
I remember that. Yeah.
Someone had posted it on Reddit, and so I downloaded it, and I don't remember what I saw, but there was something I saw in that form, and I'm like, I got to bet this horse. I don't remember if it was like some type of mud pedigree thing or something. I mean, I don't know. It's distorted humor, and off the top of my head, I don't know if that's huge. I mean, Seattle Slew on the bottom, so I mean,
distorted humor is a huge mud influence.
Yeah, so I think it was just like some type. There was like some note on there about likes the slop or something. I don't know. Might like the slop. I don't even remember. But I saw, man, when I saw that horse just blow by and pay as much as it did, I was like, this game's easy. Piece of cake. It was like the second day I had been betting horses. I was like, this is easy. I hit the trifecta in the Derby, and I hit it for like $2 or $3 or something, and it paid like it didn't pay a lot for a Derby trifecta, but like, you know, and then like I think I had like a $25 win bet on Justify at 5-2. I'm like, this is easy. 5-2, like they just let these horses go off at that price, and then like it wasn't until, you know, I started betting Mountaineer where I realized that, oh, there isn't 20 horses and 12 horses and 15 horses in each race. But that we can talk about the my horse racing journey. We'll do that one of these weeks and
Yeah,
just
for
kind of
sure.
get really into it, 'cause it's I think it's funny. But yeah, this actually kind of segues nicely though into our next topic, which is I saw, I think it was Chuck Simon was talking about it, and then I even saw Pull the Pocket went ahead and posted a blog specifically talking about fan education. And you had kind of pointed it out, and I thought this would be a good topic to talk about, especially you've done seminars, you've done the betting seminars at the fairs. We talked about that a little bit last week. And honestly, the whole thing that got us started doing these videos was like, yeah, like you could find books and you could find websites even with guides and things like that. But I mean, in the past 5 to 7 years, I mean, video has been king for everything, right? Like, especially for something like, I don't know, how many people have learned how to, I don't know, fix a door, or have learned how to change their oil in their car. Like people who like normally, like I know plenty of friends who've had no like very like no skill for that kind of thing, right? No mechanical skill. And they're like, I don't know, I watched a YouTube video and I learned how to do this. I was able to watch it over and over and over again. And I was just kind of thinking like, yeah, there's some video content out there, but like, I don't know if you've ever watched like the Thorograph intro, which looks like a 1995 video, like describing things. I think there was another video, and it was actually a really good video series. I think it was Horse Player Now's Night
Yeah,
School,
yeah,
right? But like you look at it and you're like, man, this is way ahead of its time. Like this was like probably like 5-10 years too early, like because I think it's like early 2000s, mid 2000s. But that was kind of the reason that we got into doing videos and doing podcasts and like getting stuff out there, and getting stuff out there kind of with differing views, right? Me personally, I'm a newer player. Honestly, half the time, like we talk about races, or we do anything, like Caleb will talk about a horse or Mark will talk about a horse. I'm like, oh, like I didn't see that, or I would have never thought of that way. And you guys will even see me, if you guys watch, you'll see me make marks on the PPs, like as Caleb and Mark are talking. I'm like, oh, well, maybe I will include that horse. And like me personally, like I come from a perspective of like pace almost 100%, 95%. Speed figures be damned. Like I want the horse that's on the front end if he's gonna get it easy. So the different perspectives, the different ways to kind of look at it, and that's kind of like where we came from it. But yeah, I mean, why don't you talk a little bit about kind of what you've seen as someone who's been in the industry for a bit, worked for a couple different companies, and where fan education is kind of gone, and I mean, frankly, some of its shortcomings.
sure. So the line that I use in a couple of things that I've written, that I've said, that I've done is horse racing as a whole often says, we want to grow the game. We want to grow the game. We want to grow the game. Somebody comes up with an idea that either A, won't produce gigantic immediate results, or presents a short-term sacrifice for a long-term gain. At which point, racing goes, you want us to do what? And that's the struggle that fan education has right now. Look, is it sexy to come up with this sort of stuff? No. Is it a lot easier to put together slick marketing campaigns that have really good looking people in expensive outfits, sipping $30 cocktails, listening to Post Malone at a nightclub on the freaking racetrack? Sure. That gets people in for one day. Maybe. What are you doing to ensure they come back? What are you doing to ensure horse racing survival? It's a big question. And there have been a lot of people that are incredibly smart that try to combat this in any number of ways, many of whom I respect greatly for this. You'll look at guys like Tom Amello, who's Track Facts over on Twitter. He is huge on fan education. I'm sat in on a couple of seminars he does. He's phenomenal, world-class guy. You look at some of the stuff Inside the Pylons does. I think he needs a marketing person sometimes. But the crux of it is wanting to make better, smarter in order to grow the game. And ultimately, it's one of those situations where, in a lot of cases, racing markets to the audience it doesn't have, but wishes it has, rather than the audience it needs in order to keep the sport going. Now, I am not saying that there isn't a place for things about, the scene of the game, about society, about fashion, whatever. You want to do that stuff, go ahead. That's not going to keep the industry going. It's not going to make sure there is a business that you leave behind for your kids and your grandkids to enjoy. And that's how I got into the game as a kid at Saratoga. You make it a scene that people want to be a part of, and you inform them with what they need in order to either win or have fun while losing. What's racing doing now to do that? Not a whole heck of a lot. And that discussion turned into something else. And it was a situation where, again, a lot of the things that Chuck Simon had been saying spurred this. I put on my Twitter and I challenged people to say, okay, you've got you and 5 empty chairs in a room for a day. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, come up with ideas that grow the game significantly. Who do you want? It's a fascinating question, because what do you value? What do you value growing the game? Who do you think brings that to the table, in this case, literally? And who do you trust to actually do something about it?
I'll tell you, who, I see it both ways, right? I understand, and you kind of pointed out the fashion, the food, the drinks part, right? Like, hey, like, who doesn't like every once in a while going somewhere nice, having a couple cocktails, having some food? You don't like it?
No, I'm pointing to the bourbon down here.
Oh, the bourbon part. Oh, I was like, then again, I was like, why is he using the pointer finger?
No, I'm pointing to the bourbon down there.
Yeah.
Look, there's absolutely a place for that. I'm not saying there isn't.
But like seriously, like when I talked to our friend Ed DeRosa a couple months back, I was like, hey, I'm going to Churchill. Obviously he knows Churchill about as well as anybody. I'm like, hey, I'm going to Churchill. Like, where should I sit? Should I buy seats? Like, I was thinking maybe buying some box seats. And he's like, he told me about, I forgot what it's called, Millionaire's Row or Millionaire Box or whatever, the Million Room or Millionaire Room. I forgot what it's called. But he's like, get these tickets. He's like, they're expensive, but they're worth it. And we had a great time. I mean, it was empty, but we had a great time. My wife and I, they had the food buffet out there. We had a private bar and stuff. It was really nice. Nothing wrong with doing that. But I'll tell you what, there's also nothing wrong with what places like Canterbury do, right? If you ever watch Canterbury and watch the stream, there are people at Canterbury. And I think part of the struggle is getting people to the track, right? And the second part is educating them to bet. And that second part's hard too, not just because of the cost and the involvement, like and similar to what you said, like horse racing is like, what? You want us to give a program out for free? You want us to just give away this $2 we charge people when they come into the track and just give it for free? But the other part of it, I do think, like, I'm not going to be here. I'm not some boomer, right? I'm not going to sit here and be like the people nowadays have no attention span or anything like that. But what I will say, and what I do notice sometimes, especially on live streams or particularly in Discord, if you didn't know, I was a former moderator of the Reddit Discord. Mark is still a moderator there. That's kind of where we all met. That's kind of where, we've always bounced ideas off of each other. But part of the problem is you get new people who come in and they're like, all right, who's got winners? Who's got tips? Right? They don't want to be told, how to bet or how to handicap. They just want to be told, all right, who do you guys like? Who wins? Right? The pink sheet, exactly, right? You're pointing that out. It's actually kind of funny because, like, I'm saying this and then I'm starting to think my brother who's also he was more avid horse player. After the closing of Arlington, he's a little bit less active because we used to go to the track a couple times a year, and now obviously we don't go. But we used to go to the track, him and a couple of his friends and his brother-in-law. And his brother-in-law was just the man used to bet hundreds of dollars, maybe $500, $600, $700, like is what he would bring with him to the track, right? So he's probably, if he hits a couple bets, he's handling probably north of like $2,000, right?
Right.
And all he did was ask me and my brother or his friends what he liked, whatever they said. I mean, he'd be like, all right, 200 to win. You know, I mean, there's people out there, right? Hey, there's people out there that would put money through, right? If we made it easier in some way, or if they went to the track, right? If we got people there. But yeah, it's just funny. Like when COVID hit and, you know, we'd be sitting in the Discord and there'd just be people coming in and be like, all right, who's got tips? Who's got the winners? And like, I remember Mark told me once that he hit this pick 5, and after he hit it, like 6 or 7 people DM'd him that he had never even seen interact in chat, never seen him do anything. And they're like, how can we tip you? And they all posted winning tickets. So like Mark gave out like a pick 5, right? Like, and his structure like is usually a couple $100, but his A ticket hit and he had it multiple times and he had it for a couple grand. And he had just a bunch of people like message him like, oh, like we just tailed you.
Yep.
And so like for some people that's what they want, you know? And so like those people, like you're never going to teach, but I do think that there's a very large subset of people my age and younger, or our age and younger, we can say, that I don't know, maybe if they were given slightly easier access to data, honestly, the amount of people during COVID who were like, hey, like I work in data science and I want to try and like model something, like how can I get started? Where can I find data? And we're like, $150 a month is what you're gonna need to pay. And they're like, it's gonna take them months to build that model out and test it. And they're, you know, I mean, some people they'll spend a couple $100 to back test and do all that, but like, you know, to some college kid, right, who's good with Excel and, you know, thinks he might be able to do something, like he's not gonna pay that up. And I think that was one of the big booms to DFS, is that you could just get that data and you could build your model and build your projections.
Are you familiar with the story of Robin Hewlett and Handicapper?
Yep.
Okay. That's the story. And for those that are unfamiliar, I'll tell the story as quickly as I can. A couple of years ago, Robin Hewlett, very, very smart person, put together this database and this tool. It was a simple to use thing called Handicapper using Equibase data. It wasn't anything overly sophisticated either. It was accessible. It was a good product if you were looking for a product like that. Equibase sent a cease and desist. It's their data, whatever, do what you want. T.D. Thornton, writing for the Thoroughbred Daily News, I believe at the time, wrote an excellent article detailing the situation. And Josh, he asked the most perfect question in the history of horse racing journalism. He got someone from Equibase on the record to admit that Handicapper was a good idea, to admit that it was something new, innovative, whatever. And he hit the most beautiful haymaker that I have ever seen in racing journalism when he asked something to the effect of, so if this was a fantastic idea, why did you send a cease and desist rather than hiring this person? Racing in a nutshell, folks, right?
Yep.
That was seriously, I saw that and I actually reached out to him. I never talked to the guy, never met the guy, whatever. I just had to say, that's the best question I have seen asked in a very, very long time. And if racing is to grow, if racing is to not just survive, but thrive, we need to be asking these questions, not just of ourselves, but of the people that have the ability to A, make change within the game, and B, have the responsibility to bring people to the track, introduce them to this game, and see if it catches. Look, I've taken people to the track before and it just hasn't caught. Fine. Respectful. I get it. It's not going to be everybody's thing. That's one thing. But it sure seems like there have been times where people's only ideas aren't to grow the game, it's to grow the subset of the game that they're involved in. And there are people like that I have absolutely no patience for, because if you're not going to grow the entire pie, if you're only trying to grow your piece of a pie that's not going to get any bigger, you have no business sense.
Yeah, there was a... So I remember because Robin posted his app on Reddit, and I remember a lot of people really, really dug it, and they helped him. They were like, hey, like, we noticed this, like, can you do this? And you know, he made a couple updates, and then, you know, he kind of posted eventually that he's like, yeah, it's like I can't keep this up anymore. And he mentioned the cease and desist. Other cease and desist, big one. I remember there was a Twitch streamer who was playing Harness.
Yep.
Right. Which is like, if you want to talk about thoroughbred racing having a marketing problem, Harness, I mean, outside of Gabe Pruitt, right? You got nobody.
Track that was low level and built itself up with the kind of following that any track would love having the groundswell of, closed itself down to make room for a parking garage.
Oh, man.
Racing in a nutshell, folks. But seriously, Gabe Pruitt is a marketing genius. I do know that he has said that he's free in the winter. Somebody give him something to do, please.
But I remember this Twitch streamer, and he basically was like, he's like, do I need to ask? Like, it's like, do I need to ask the tracks? Who can I talk to? Somebody from Robert's stream.
Yeah, I remember this story.
And you know what? I always tell people, it's like, it wasn't even the fact that they said no. It's the way that they say no, right? I believe the gentleman from Robert's stream basically ended it with, we'll see you in court. It sounds like you're not going to listen.
Yeah. You know? The thing with this, and I had some involvement in, not necessarily with this situation, but I've seen it from a couple of different angles, right? I'm a content creator. We want to create the kind of content that people will enjoy. Sometimes that means taking risks. I understand the track and Roberts not wanting this guy to do what he did. I understand that. They don't want their stream pirated. They want to be able to control that, and that's fine. Work with the guy. Even if it's a case where, you know, you restrict the guy from doing certain things, or, you know, you meet him halfway on something, there was more that could be done there. I don't agree with the people who say, oh, Robert should have rolled over and completely let the guy do whatever he wants. There was more that could have been done. I saw the last email. It was not pretty. That was horrible communications by people that were involved. That's something that I think a lot of people want do-overs on if we were able to give them that. Again, it's just one of those things where there's certain things with track feeds you can't do because of agreements and whatnot. And had that been handled in that way, whatever, we'll see in court. That was not a well-written email. It just wasn't.
Yeah. But, I mean, luckily we're not PR people.
Well, I mean, I used to be. Thankfully, I'm more so on the content production and strategy side of things. But, you know, it is one of those things where, with my experience and having hosted a show in TVG Extra that got killed when Stronach decided they weren't going to allow us to use the feed in that capacity anymore, I understood it. But it's also one of those instances where you're telling me there's no workaround where everybody's happy. You're telling me that Roberts can't put up some sort of fan community where people can do that and Roberts can make a little extra money off of it. Like, there's one of those things where anybody with any sort of marketing or business sense, had they been able to get around the table that I had been envisioning in this situation and come up with something where everybody was satisfied, it just seems like Nobody wants to make those deals in racing anymore. And it's a shame, especially when it comes to fan, interest, fan education, fan cultivation, whatever it is you want to call it. There's more that can be done. And there are a lot of people that are just shutting doors based on the 8 most dangerous words in the English language, which are, but that's the way we've always done it.
Yeah, I guess, and I know now we're getting more into marketing than just fan education.
That's a key part of this. It really is.
But I'll tell you, man, like I think 2 tracks that got it, and it's really unfortunate what's happening to one of them, are Canterbury, right? Who I think is still poised as a really, really nice product. They have a nice turf course, which, at least from what I've seen from my group of friends, seems to be what people like to bet now.
Mm-hmm.
And the other being Sam Houston Racecourse.
There's third. You can't talk about growth in racing without talking about Kentucky Downs and the work
Kentucky Downs, yeah.
Johnson did during his time there. The last couple of meets, there's been some screwy stuff. You're seeing horses break from the wrong stalls. You're seeing batteries dying. But at any rate, shout out to CJ for the work that he did with Kentucky Downs in growing that. But no, you're absolutely right, and especially with Sam Houston. And look, the solution that's being touted by people who know a lot about this stuff is takeout, 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 takeout. How do you explain the concepts of takeout and breakage to somebody going to the track for the first time in 15 seconds or less? You don't. Yep. I understand the appeal once you get them from 101 level studies to a 201 level studies. That's where you do it. But you don't do that right as you're getting people in the door. You do that, you're flooding them with a lot of information they don't care about. They just want winners. They want winning tickets. And they want to know why you like those horses. And when you get someone to the point where you're saying, tell me more, that's when you've got them.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I will say about takeout, because I remember this was something that, I was like, hey, we got to do a video talking about takeout. And like at some point, after someone, it might have been Chase that gave me pushback, or maybe it was Mark, and they were like, this isn't really like that important. But like one of the things I think you kind of brought up is, coming to bet and just like not getting your face kicked in right away.
Yeah.
And the more money you give back to the player, the longer they're going to stay in the game, right? I mean, it's like poker, right? Dumb luck sometimes just wins out, and right, the fish keeps their money. And it's just about keeping them in the game, smiling, enjoying it, and playing more, right? If you've ever like played poker with a bunch of serious people, and I had a friend who was like this, who would like berate you for doing something stupid. It's like, that's what horse racing does, right? Horse racing's like the tapping on the glass.
And horse racing Twitter on a Monday.
Yeah. Like, it's just like, no, like, hey, I see some of these tickets on Twitter. Some of them I'm like, these people are very sharp, real good handicappers. Some of them I'm like, I am glad I'm in the same pool as them. I mean, that's just how it is. And I think the pari-mutuel aspect of it, and this once again is fan education. I think it's like poker. You're just sitting at a huge table because everybody's got their money, and you put your money where your mouth is when you bet and the horses, right? It's not like betting sports, right? You're not betting against a house. You're betting against everybody else in there. And I feel like sometimes that's lost. And another thing, and this is, I completely forgot to tell this story. I went to a bar close by with my brother and a couple of his friends. My brother works for JP Morgan Chase, right?
La-di-da.
So he works for JP Morgan, and I think he's JP Morgan now fully. But at the time, right, his buddies that were there were bank managers, were private bankers, were investment coaches, like financial advisors. That's what word I was looking for, right? All making 80, 90, 100,000 plus. I know one of the managers that was there. My brother told me how much he made, and my like eyes popped out.
Yeah.
And we were all sitting there for March Madness. Well, this bar also happened to have an OTB in it. And my brother and I were sitting there watching, the opening week games, and I think Hawthorne was running. I think was running in March, and Gulfstream and a couple of the other tracks that run in March, Fairgrounds, and we're like, my brother and I look at each other, like, yeah, we should probably throw in a couple bets, and the guys watching us, they're like, wait. Don't you have to like walk over to the OTB to place your bet? And it's like, no, you can bet on your phone. Mind you, this was pre-pandemic. This was like 2018, 2019, right? This was before sports betting was legal in Illinois. And they're like, wait, you can bet on your phone? We're like, yeah. They're like, how long has this been legal? And I mean, we're like, I don't know, probably 10, 15, 20 years, something. Like you used to have to call them in, but then once apps became a thing, you could, since forever, you've been able to bet on the phone or online. And they just the look on their face is just dumbfounded. And then they're like, well, what, like how many races? Like, and we're like, you could bet a race every 15 minutes if you want, every 10 minutes, every 5 minutes. You could just fire away all day. And they're like, really? And they're just like dumbfounded. And so then my brother walks away. He goes to the OTB. He comes back with, this was an Arlington OTB at the time. So he comes back with that big old thick Brisnet like DRF
the
equivalent, right? So it's like $7 or whatever. So he comes back with it, and they're like, well, what is that? And they're like, oh, and my brother's like, oh, this is the form. And he starts explaining it. And they're like, oh, can you grab us one? And he's like, yeah, it's $7. And they're like, what? And we're like, yeah, it's $7. Like, you have to buy it. And they're like, you have to buy that to bet on the races? And I'm not even kidding you. They're like, their interest, they were hook, line, and sinker, ready to like create accounts and everything. And then they were just like, oh. And then like I was like, oh, well, on Twin Spires, you can get them free and stuff like that. And we were explaining it. But by that point, they were done. Right. And the next day, I was talking to my brother. And he goes, yeah, they went to Rivers Casino, and after they left the bar, they went to Rivers Casino. And it's like they each lost like $1,000. And I'm just like, look at, like literally horse racing right there. Like these are guys on a Friday afternoon, skipped out on work, went out and spent $1,000 at Rivers Casino, and literally you lost them over a $7 form. You lost, and how much would they have bet? I don't know. It's just funny. And like, yeah, like part of it is education, I think 100%, but I feel like there's so many other barriers to it. I remember Arlington used to charge admission, and it was just funny. Like it was like $10 to get in.
Yeah.
Arlington used to charge for you to bring in a cooler, and they inspected your cooler to make sure there was no alcohol in it. Because if there's alcohol in it, then you couldn't bring it in. So like it was just like getting nickel and dime while you're trying to get in to bet and enjoy the day. And I feel like a lot of us do it in spite of all of it. But I mean, I don't know, like if horse racing just get out of its own way a little bit, I think it would help. But
I keep getting reminded of this. The notion of horse players is that we're a bunch of miserable people. In some cases, we're in our mid-30s going on our mid-90s, right? Just crotchety, wannabe grumpy old people, right? I disagree with that wholeheartedly. I think horse racing fans are some of the most positive people on the planet because in spite of all of these barriers to entry, we keep coming back. We are the Buffalo Bills fans of everything else, just waiting for our Josh Allen to appear. And that was part of the reason why I put together that challenge where, okay, you've got you and whatever interests you have, you can invite 5 other people, get in for a day, see what you can do. Can I go through my table before we maybe call this a night since we're at about 49 minutes?
Go for it.
All right. So my keys to my table, there's 3 of them. diversity, selflessness, and patience. And diversity is not just based on gender or race or creed, whatever. It's differing viewpoints from differing parts of the industry. Rolly Hoyt, who is a television personality, had said that he wanted all of the managers of all of the racetracks at his table. That's fine. I've got a racetrack manager at my table, but why do you want to hear the same sets of problems from the same group of people who don't necessarily have the answers? That to me just doesn't seem productive. So selflessness is what it sounds like. People that are willing to take short-term sacrifices for the greater good, and patience, meaning, look, Rome's not going to be built in a day. We're not going to turn this into the biggest gambling game in the country overnight. It's going to take a little bit of time. With that in mind, you've got me, the gambler, content creator, marketing type, somebody that's very passionate about the game. Congratulations, all other gamblers. I'm your rep. Anyway, I want Amy Howe, the CEO from FanDuel, in there. And the misconceptions that I'm seeing about TVG rebranding to FanDuel TV and thus trying to kill horse racing, that could not be further from the truth, because why would FanDuel cannibalize some of its own business? It's just basic economic stuff here. And I was not a business major in college, far from it. But you're telling me that they rebranded there so that they could kill horse racing rather than grow it? What? I want somebody at that table that isn't afraid to take risks, that isn't afraid to say from a business standpoint why you're doing certain things. For that reason, Amy Howe's at the table. I want Richard Migliore at the table. Former jockey, more than 4,000 wins, knows everything about horses that the people that are in business and the people that are in marketing don't know, isn't going to be afraid to say an idea is a stupid idea, isn't going to be afraid to go at somebody across the table if somebody says something stupid. I want somebody with that kind of passion. I want somebody that knows how to communicate this great game to the masses and a wide variety of people. I mean, you see what Richard Migliore does on the Daily NYRA broadcast. He is just a fantastic ambassador for horse racing. Want him there. I want Shannon Arvin, the president and CEO of Keeneland, at that table, because think about all the things Keeneland does. You're talking about two of the most important boutique meets in the country, one in the spring, one in the fall. They got the Breeders' Cup there. They have a number of services for horse racing fans, for the horse racing media. I know a couple of people that swear by the Keeneland Library. You've got the Keeneland sales, which are in and of itself, millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. Yeah, they're familiar with the breeding game. They'd be able to tell you what works and what doesn't and what changes need to be made in order to ensure everybody does what they need to do. Get Shannon at the table. I want Greg Harbit at the table. Owner, trainer, bloodstock agent, got Necker Island to the Kentucky Derby. If everybody looks the same and is thinking the same things, someone's doing something wrong. We need people from a variety of different walks of life in this game. And as I said in an interview with Ken Rudolph on my prior podcast, Champagne and JD, and as he said in his Believe podcast, there's a big difference between a track being open and a track being a welcoming environment for people. It goes back to lowering that barrier to entry and making sure we're as welcoming as possible to as many people as possible. Are we doing that? Go look at what Tom Van Meter said a couple of years ago that got him run off at Keeneland. Just saying, we got work to do. Also, last seat at the table, I want Rick Schosberg, who just announced his retirement from training. He has trained a variety of very strong horses on the New York circuit. If you've never heard of a horse named Affirmed Success, go watch some of his replays. Dirt, turf, sprint, mile, cool horse, tough SOB. But the main reason I want him at the table, he does a lot of stuff with the Take the Lead retirement program and horse racing aftercare, something that is grossly underfunded and something that represents a very valid concern in the eyes of people who don't want to go to the racetrack. Well, aren't horses just shot if they can't run? Look, it sounds ridiculous to people that are listening to this. It sounds ridiculous to anybody that knows the care that these horses have, but that information's not getting there. Horse racing's enemies are far better marketers than horse racing in that regard. We need somebody at that table whose role is to say, okay, how do we reach these people? So my table, 6 people. Me, Amy Howe from FanDuel, Richard Migliori from Naira, Shannon Arvin from Keeneland, Greg Harbert, owner, trainer, bloodstock agent, and Rick Schosberg. I think we can get something done here, Josh.
I was gonna make a comment how you didn't have any from Naira, but then I forgot you had Mig in there.
Of course.
But yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't know. I honestly don't know that many people in the industry. I don't know many of the players. I can only speak from like personal experience, people who like I've interacted with or talked to or been with, who've, at least to me, I feel like they get it. One, like, honestly, one of those, like, and I'm gonna say this, and I'm sure if any of my friends are listening, they're gonna be like, "Oh, of course you said this guy." But one of the sharpest guys, and I think someone who kind of understands it, and he likes to say, "I beat this game," over and over and over again, sometimes to the point where he says it all the time. But Tommy Massis is actually a really, really sharp guy, and not just obviously as a gambler, but just the conversations I've had with him. We went to Keeneland together, and we talk every couple months, and he just, I don't know, he just gets it. And I think that, like, someone like that, someone who has played and done it every which way, doing it fixed odds, doing it, hitting that huge score at Hong Kong. And honestly, if anybody's listening, like, and ever wants to, like, if you DM him or you message him, he will talk. He'll talk to you, and he is one of the sharpest guys I know. Some of the stuff, like, I always laugh, like, he'll say something and I'll call him a boomer or whatever, but no, he's a real sharp guy, and he really gets it. And he agrees. He's like, he agrees that the small time person is the one who's getting kind of ripped off the most. Our mutual friend Ed, I think, is another guy who really gets it from a gambler perspective. And I think he also does get it a bit from working for, CDI, and kind of seeing how the sausage is made a little bit. And honestly, I think people from tracks like Canterbury, who seem to have the fan part down. I have a friend, Rob, shout out to Rob. He works, and not the Rob that we know, it's a different Rob, but he works for Canterbury as a bartender. And he just, like, he talks about just how great the atmosphere is constantly, and like how many people he sees and how many people come in. And it's just like, you think about it, it's like, this isn't Saratoga, right? This isn't like this is in Minnesota, like but it's something that people do. They come out, and they.
We talked about this a little bit last week when we talked about the fair tracks. You don't have to have an A+ product to deliver an A+ fan experience. I've been to Canterbury. It's a wonderful place. I was there in 2008, I remember, because my dad and I went to Minnesota for a couple of concerts up there, and we had an off day. We went to Canterbury. We played poker. We watched some horses. It was fun. It's a cool place. And you get a place like that with that kind of passion. You don't necessarily need to have grade 1 races every day. If the excitement is there, if people come back, that's when you get people in the tell me more stage. And that's when you roll out, oh yeah, some of the lowest takeout rates in the country. And that's when it resonates with people.
Yep. And I mean, I know you mentioned the president of Keeneland.
Yes.
I think a guy like Jim Goodman just understands it.
Great guy.
He just gets it. And like, you see it, I see it in the way that, he was walking around and shaking people's hands, talking to people, and just the way he interacts with people on Twitter. Like he understands. And what's important is he's also a player. Like, he plays, so he gets it, right? If something stupid happens and there's some weird glitch, or like, he understands the pain as a player, and is able to, just kind of commiserate with the player. And also, I mean, they've done great stuff with that Turf Pick 3, doing stuff outside the box, things like that. Like, but honestly, like I really love your pick of Greg Harbert. I remember seeing a couple of like interviews and like they did like the features on him during the Derby, and like yeah, we need more people like that, right? We need more people like that and more people who don't look the same. Unfortunately, I'm last name I'm first generation born Mexican American, but you probably can't tell just by looking at me. So I mean, like, you need diversity. Exactly. Like I think a guy like the Sniper, is always great to see on stuff.
Love Barrett
Um,
Spears. Love that man.
yeah, I Ken Rudolph. I know like sometimes he just kind of is off the rails, like just like wild taking long shots and stuff. But like you need people like that, But
Sure, you need somebody with that kind of passion. And the other thing I'll tell you with Ken, having talked with him and him agreeing to sit down with us when he had no obligation to do that, we approached him after his Believe podcast went out. And if you haven't listened to that, track it down. It's absolutely worth your time. Iron sharpens iron with him. He's an all-time good dude.
yeah, so I thought this was totally going to be like a half hour like podcast, and we're going to knock this
went an
out.
hour, and we could go 3 more hours, but we're already around midnight your time. We're at about 10 o'clock here. I'll tell you this. How about this? Let's challenge some of our listeners and our watchers out there. Do this challenge. It's you and 5 other people around the thoroughbred industry. Put it down in the comments on YouTube if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're getting your podcast elsewhere, navigate to the On the Wrong Lead YouTube channel and subscribe. You probably already have, but go there, hit the like button, helps out with the algorithm, participate in the community there. It's a fun challenge too, because you realize if you're limited to 5 people, you're like, wait, why can't I have 10? But if you up it to 10, you're going, man, I really want 15 or 20. There are a lot of people in this game that mean well, and there are a lot of people that are doing what they can in order to ensure that this game doesn't just survive, but thrive. The problem is there's a lot of systems in place that really need to be reevaluated.
Yep, and I think you pointed out best is you're going to need somebody with patience. You're going to need somebody who's willing to take that risk. I remember when Sam Houston announced their 12% takeout, everyone was like, "What?" And I think 3 years running, they've broken record after record after record in handle. So hopefully we'll get a 4th year. We'll see what happens.
Please handle this stuff with HISA. Look,
yeah.
I got 2 final thoughts here. First of all, the stuff with Texas and HISA, you can understand that HISA is an imperfect bill without dropping a nuclear bomb on your own industry because reasons. Just saying. Also, the second one, just a quick thing. Back when JD and I did our show, one of our biggest fans was a guy named Lenny Reich. Those of you that are in the athletics world might have heard of him. He was the sports information director for a college called Mount Union in Alliance, Ohio, which was a D3 football powerhouse. But he was a diehard racing guy too. And he did everything he could to boost our signal and amplify our voices out when we were doing that show. Unfortunately, he passed away. He retired at the end of the last academic year. He had some pretty major league health stuff and unfortunately wound up passing away over the weekend. So really sad stuff to see. Condolences out there to those who knew him. He was starting to get a little bit more active in the horse racing Twitter side of things before, unfortunately, stuff took a turn for the worse. But all-time good guy that's going to be missed. But just one of those situations where, again, there's a lot of good people in this game. And when you lose one, it sucks. And I don't know if you can hear, but that's my cat Elliot outside.
I was trying to do like the moment of silence thing, and then your cat had different.
My guys, as usual, cat with everything. I very much love Elliot.
All right. Well,
I've been in the Pacific Northwest for a couple of days, and he misses me, so for whatever that's worth. But anyway, seriously, if you got some time, think about it. Put that in the comments. I'd love to see what people think and the combinations people come up with.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you guys for checking us out. Obviously, if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe. And then this is also being sent out to all the podcast platforms: Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or not YouTube, Stitcher, and all those other ones. I know Spotify and Apple are the two big ones, but if you guys, even if you guys watch on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, download, and help us get those numbers up. So, yeah, we'll let you guys know when the next episode of Drinking Champagne will be, but I'm sure it'll be within within a week ish. We're gonna try and keep this cadence going, but we gotta make sure we get a nice scheduled time here. But as usual, we'll be live on Thursday night and Saturday morning, so check us out there, and we'll catch you guys later.
Have a good night, everybody.